Good morning, everybody.
It is 9 a.m. All right. Good morning, everyone. Well, I know there's some important conversations going on right now about cereal and whatever else you guys are talking about.
Tell your system.
What's that?
Tell your system.
Tell my system
Yeah.
for eating cereal.
Because you have a turkey.
Oh, well, I
Give you a break.
eat my bowl of cereal dry with a glass of Trendy. So I'm a little weird.
Stay crunchy to the end.
That's right. It stays crunchy that way. But good morning, everyone. Welcome to 1 Million Cups. And if you haven't checked in, and those of you who are online, scan that code and check in. And hopefully you'll drop by sometime, because if you check in so many times, then you get, we have a pen and we have a notebook. And let's see. All right. Thank you. That's the thing I was looking for. All right, so our mission at 1 Million Cups is to lower the barrier of access to education, resources, and connection for all new and aspiring entrepreneurs. And we do that through our local mission by, number one, making sure we have a consistent program where a presenter presents about their business and about their challenges, and you as the audience get to ask them questions, maybe challenge them to think about their business in a different way. Put down my coffee cup. And we also try to create connections afterwards. We often find everyone gets into some great conversations and makes connections. Whoop. There we are, Elvira and Lonesome. They're in Albuquerque, New Mexico. We are the only 1 Million Cups in the state. But as you can see, it is a national organization, and Texas and Oklahoma tend to have a lot of them. If you presented here, you might check out the other locations that are doing hybrid presentations, so you could present virtually. And it is a presentation, not a pitch. Generally, we want to hear about your journey as an entrepreneur. We want to see authentic connections, right? When we say not networking, we're just talking about, if you see someone who's just running around handing out their business cards, that's not really a connection. All right, so and run for the community, by the community. And we want to continually be radically and intentionally inclusive. And I'm not going to read this to you, but basically, what can we do for you guys? You're not in this by yourself. And if you want to apply, if you have a business and you've sold your product to more than just your mother, please go online and sign up. And even if you haven't sold your product yet, talk to us. We're willing to make some tweaks to the rules. And this is these are our organizers. We have Paul Szauter, who is presenting today. We have Lisa Atkins, who is our lead organizer. Eric Rins-Whitmore, who's running amok somewhere. Adam Sparks-Brechtel in the back. And then myself, Sonia Doing. And these are our wonderful sponsors. So Fat Pipe, yes, yay, sponsors. So this is Fat Pipe that we're in right now. If you guys are ever looking for a great space to work, you can rent a space here for a day, a week. I was only gonna be here for a year. I've been here forever. So yeah. Jason Collin Photography, he's our official photographer. Thank you, Jason. We have More Than Organized, who brings the creamer. Thank you, Miriam. Noventum Custom Software, who brings the donuts. And GOS Capital, who pays for our coffee. So thank you, GOS Capital. And I want to thank you all for joining us. If you have any images that you're sharing, make sure to use our hashtag 1MCABQ. Yeah, I was gonna say. All right, and that's it. So normally we bring up the coach, but I'm also the coach today for, not that I needed to coach Paul very much, because he already knows the way that we present to our audience. Bless you. And I do have one fun fact. He owns 5 birds. That's pretty impressive. That's gotta be a noisy house at certain times of the day.
Yeah.
Well, come on up, Paul.
And the great thing is, when I rehearse my talk at home, by the end, the African gray knows the talk. So that's fun. It's working. Yes. I'm Paul Szauter, founder and chief scientific officer of EquiSeq. We develop and sell genetic tests for horses. So for horse breeders seeking to breed sound horses, EquiSeq's myopathy panel is a DNA test that identifies horses at risk for a muscle wasting disease before they develop symptoms. And unlike muscle biopsy, EquiSeq's DNA test is non-invasive. We just need a hair sample. So today we're going to talk about three things, which are in all 1 Million Cups talks: my origin story, how the company operates, and what are the challenges ahead of us. So here's my origin story. I was not bitten by a radioactive spider in the 1960s. However, in 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite, and America went into a blind panic. If we didn't start producing more scientists and engineers, we were all going to end up speaking Russian and working on collective farms. So that didn't sound like fun, so I became a scientist. And in 1976, I entered grad school, got a PhD in genetics, and began an academic career as a Drosophila geneticist. In 2000, I retooled, started to work in mammalian genomics and bioinformatics by taking a job at the Jackson Laboratory, which is the center of the universe for mouse genetics. In 2011, I came to New Mexico to take a job at the University of New Mexico. And after a couple of years, entered the private sector. We started EquiSeq in 2015. So what does the company do? This is a classic alliance known to his friends as Maverick. Maverick is a paint horse, and he's one of the first horses identified with the P2 genetic variant, which we've associated with the muscle wasting disease. And one day on Facebook, Maverick's owner posted that she woke up to find him lying in the snow. And 4 big guys from next door came over to stand him up, but Maverick couldn't remain standing. By the time the vet got there, Maverick was dead. There is no treatment or cure for the muscle wasting disease. It has to be bred out. That's actually pretty simple to do. Hair tests are easy. Genetic testing works this way. Horse owners pull hair, get the roots, just like a crime scene TV show. They mail it into us and they get the results back electronically. So how did we develop that? Every living thing is descended from a single common ancestor, and all mammals are closely related. All mammals basically share the same set of genes, and that means that data from humans and mice can be used to understand horses. So here's how we take advantage of that. We identify horses with the muscle wasting disease and analyze them by whole genome sequencing. This gives us all genetic variants in that horse that differ from the reference sequence. We compare those variants to a list of human genes known to be associated with muscle disease to look for promising variants. Finally, we file patents and deploy commercial testing. So, are people buying the test? Why doesn't everybody buy the test? Well, every new technology is part of the technology adoption life cycle, which you may be familiar with. The first people to use the test are innovators. They don't mind if it takes a long time to get their results back. They don't mind that the website's a little bit wonky or customer service isn't quite what it ought to be. They're real believers in this. And so they've been very helpful to us. We're past that stage. We're in the early adopters. They have more conventional expectations on turnaround time and customer service and how the company ought to operate, and we strive to keep up with that. But still, how do we drive sales? There have been a couple of forces doing that. Word of mouth among horse people on Facebook is very important. There are also influencers. So these are people that have started up Facebook groups for specific breeds and are tracking the variants in those breeds. And we've also made modest attempts at marketing. The status quo, however, resists us. Genetic testing of the kind that we offer is very disruptive to the status quo, and they fight back. So who is the status quo? When we started, we thought there was a horse market, and that's actually kind of simplistic. There's a set of stakeholders that have different and often conflicting interests. So horse owners are enthusiastic adopters of our tests. They want to use them for a pre-purchase exam so they don't get a horse that falls apart in a few years, and they want to use it to help manage the horses that they have. Breeders are a little bit more reluctant. So breeders have a big economic stake in this. A couple of breeders have gone out in front of this, have cleaned up their herds, and are producing only clean stock. They expect to get a premium for that in the future, but most breeders are holding out. Vets, there's a spectrum there. We have some vets that are collaborating with us. Some are recommending our tests to their clients, but most are waiting for peer-reviewed publications. Then there are the breed organizations. These are largely influenced by the concerns of large breeders, so they tend to be conservative, and it'll be a while before they adopt our test. So The big question that lots of these people have, or argue both the other side of, is, are these tests any good? So how do we know the tests are any good? So the first thing to say is that the FDA regulates all stuff having to do with human medicine, but nothing outside of humans. So the FDA has nothing to say about our tests. The USDA regulates drugs and other treatments on non-human animals, but they don't regulate genetic testing. So there is no agency in the United States that can put the seal of approval on our tests, and it's up to the market whether our tests are any good or not. So what would be the evidence that our tests are any good? Patents. We have filed 2 patents. They have not yet been issued. I'll tell you that the path to getting a patent issued in genetic testing is a nasty one. It's difficult, time-consuming, and expensive, but ultimately I think it's worth it. We are confident, and our attorney is confident, that we're going to get these patents issued. Second thing is sales. You know, people want to see are other people buying the test. People looking at the company from the outside want to see the appropriate trajectory in sales, and we have ways on how to get there. And finally, peer-reviewed publications. This is a really big deal for the veterinarians and breed organizations. Otherwise, they're changing their practices and asking their members to do things based on an internet rumor. So there's no substitute for peer-reviewed publications. And we have selected 3 research projects that are most likely to result in publications, and we're putting all of our effort into that right now. And each of these projects is on a different gene, but they use techniques that we haven't used before. I can briefly tell you those techniques. Cell culture, so we isolate skin from a horse, culture cells from that, and do an assay on the cultured cells. A yeast assay where we use genetically modified yeast that are expressing a horse protein, and we can see the effect of the mutations that we're studying in horse. And finally, zebrafish that have been genetically modified using CRISPR to mimic the horse mutations. So I love to talk about science. If any of you want to talk about science in detail, we can talk about those things. This is some of our team, and I'm really proud to have been part of this group of people. I'm going to single out Alex Hafez, who was our CEO for over 3 years and presented his new company, Circular Genomics, here 2 weeks ago. He remains on our board and advises on strategic things. Also, I'll point out that the to-be-named CEO slot is open. So we are looking for someone who can take us to the next level. I'll talk about that a bit more. So, right over my text, that's ideal.
That's why I sit here so I can move it around.
Yeah, these are the challenges. All right, so the #1 challenge is to achieve some peer-reviewed publications, and I'm happy about how that's going. I can tell you some more stories. Another thing we'd like to do is recruit the CEO who can take us to the next level. By next level, I mean, we want a CEO who's been through an exit, understands the industry, and is willing to sit in the pilot seat of this thing. That brings us to prepare for exit. Right now, we've had a very good conversation with a CEO who's a potential CEO who's a little bit overqualified for us right at the moment. And I'm like, what would EquiSeq have to be for that guy to sit in the pilot seat? So we know what some of those things are, and we continue to have conversations with people who are likely CEOs. So I've told you my origin story, what the company does, and some of our challenges. I've had great input from the 1 Million Cups community over the years, and I look forward to your questions and suggestions. We're EquiSeq. Join us.
Right.
You know the drill. Get up here, say who you are and what you're with, and ask a cool question.
Anyone online wants to ask a question, just put it in the chat and we'll call on you as well.
Good morning.
Morning.
Miriam Ortiz-Pino with More Than Organized. Are there agencies in other countries that can put stamps of approval that help with the
No.
credibility?
No.
Nowhere.
In a word, no. So, but there are strange laws in other countries.
Yeah.
The laws date from, it would be polite to say, the pre-genomics era. In some countries, it is illegal to breed an animal that has a genetic defect. I'm sorry to break this to all of you. If you were to have your genome sequenced the way I have, you would have 4 or 5 genes or mutations which, if homozygous, would kill you. So all of you would be prohibited from breeding under European rules if you were horses. So those are silly rules. And then it comes, if we recognize this genetic variant somehow through breed organizations, does this mean that everybody's required to test and there will be court cases and people suing each other? So some of that has already started, but the laws on genetic testing are antiquated. And at least in the United States, we don't have those. We don't have laws that are entirely ignorant on genetic testing. They just stay out of it for animals. Thank
Oh,
you.
well, it was a thought.
Michael,
Bob?
we started this conversation a
We
while
sure
ago.
did.
Ask a question about
We sure
that
did.
stuff. right?
That stuff, exactly. That's what I'm here to do. I'm here to prompt you. Michael Herrick, HIPAA for Humans. We're HIPAA and cybersecurity risk management for healthcare and health technology startups. And I just want to hear more about what you're doing to lay the groundwork for this new CEO. What are some of the changes that you think you have to make? You're
Right.
trying to transition from startup to scale up. What's got to change during this transition?
Yeah, and this is probably a topic of general interest because I have broken rules here at Million Cups. The company in September will have been in existence 7 years, not 5, right? So why does 1 Million Cups want people up to the 5-year point? Because you don't have any of them. Okay, after the 5-year issue, you're not dead. Okay, 20% of startups survive 5 years, right? So you're not dead. You got through the valley of death somehow. What needs to be fixed? Well, look, when you sell your house, you're going to replace the dishwasher, maybe remodel a bathroom, fix up the landscape. There's a lot of deferred maintenance, right? And so in the first 5 years of a startup, all you're looking at is the control panel and the instruments that are flashing red and buzzing. You take care of that. And everything else that's merely red or yellow, you don't do. And so there's a bunch of things that are not quite right. So we're fixing the website. So Brian of Noventum is helping us with that. There were issues with security, with customer support, with all those kind of things. So that's being fixed. There's just like record keeping and compliance stuff, which I'm not great at. And then, you know, you look at the company and say, okay, I am now looking at a lot of other companies from the outside. And I'm like, if somebody was not involved in this company and they were interested in it, what would they say? Like, okay, I don't want to put any effort or money into this company until I see issued patents and peer-reviewed publications, and I'll look at the sales trajectory. That's what I'm thinking a potential investor or partner or CEO wants. And so it depends on the CEO's risk tolerance, right? The individual that I talked to said, well, I'm not going to work for nothing. So we have to have enough money in the bank to pay him. We are operating in mad scientist mode. Since Alex is not CEO, I'm acting CEO. I'm not under adult supervision. 100% of money that's not being used to pay expenses is going into research, right? So if we're recruiting a CEO and he says, I know how to make this company successful, we'll shut off research and then suddenly we'll have profits. That's the wrong CEO for us. The value of this company is its IP. So we need a CEO who aligns with that. And at some point he says, okay, now I'm willing to get the pilot seat because you can pay me. You've got publications. It looks like the patent issuance is going well. So it's about what that person thinks is appropriate for the company. But I know the kinds of things that they'd be thinking about.
Isn't there some kind of balance that you're going to have to strike between the amount of innovation you've been doing and you can't just shut off innovation
No.
at the company,
No.
but you're also, I mean, I don't know, are you going to, is there going to be a new normal where there's an R&D budget, but it's a little different than it was in the startup days? How are you going to make those decisions?
That's up to the CEO,
Yeah.
right? Those are CEO decisions. So we have, so the kinds of technology that our board is interested in is they say, okay, can you charge more for the tests? And the answer is no. The horse market will not tolerate tests that cost more than what we're charging. They just won't do it. And so, and even worse, our licensee in Europe has dropped their prices to match a breed organization that's subsidizing their members, right? So we can't do that. But what we can do is drop costs. So we can move to a new genotyping platform if we have sufficient sales that will substantially drop our costs. And so, and that means that every horse that we test is effectively a research project because instead of testing for 6 variants, we test them for tens of thousands. So we'd love to do that, but we need volume and we need peer-reviewed publications. So we're trying to get through this first phase, and then we will move into a phase where the company is unrecognized. But thank you for asking. Great stuff. But the rest of you, think about it. You've got a company. What is it going to take to get a CEO to sit in the pilot seat to take you to an acquisition? Because that's our way out in 3 to 5 years. Think about that. Yep.
New John into lots of new things in the new normal. I know a little bit about epigenetics.
Mhm.
And in epigenetics, as you know, there are like time bombs on the DNA strain
Right.
that they're actually eradicating now.
Mhm.
Is this gene variance like a time bomb, or does the muscle problem show up only in certain conditions? Because it would seem like you don't want to just give the owner a death sentence, and you
Right.
certainly want to give them out the breeding out of it.
Right.
But at the same time, if it's present, is there ways that you've thought of to amplify and keep the horse in spite of?
Right. So,
We're gonna get all science nerdy.
yeah, we don't,
Yeah, well, he
well,
said he
I'll try,
wanted nerdy.
I'll try to keep it simple. Most of our knowledge in this area comes from horse owners on Facebook. So I don't own any horses, right? Parrots are not used for this purpose. So everything we know about how the condition develops in horses is from horse owners putting up photos, videos, and telling us stories. I get personal calls and personal messages from those people when it's time to put a horse down. And so they are better at figuring out something to mitigate these effects. So the first thing to say is there is, believe it or not, there's a human forum for human patients with myofibrillar myopathy. So I haven't set it up now, but that's what this is. So they talk about their stories. There is no management plan for human patients with those muscle diseases. They just give them a teddy bear and they say it's going to take you a long time to die, it's going to hurt, and that's it. And so
Wonderful.
for a horse, it turns out there is something you can do. It's not really a treatment, but the way horses are normally treated will kill them faster. Okay, so what you want to do is reduce starch and carbohydrate, sugar, so carbohydrates, reduce carbohydrates in the diet for sure, because that benefits all horses. That's not good for anybody. And the second thing you want to do is increase protein. So these horses with muscle wasting have constant turnover of their muscle. Muscle has a lot of protein, as you know from eating steak dinners. So they need more protein than a horse normally does. So since horses are herbivores, there's this idea that you'll blow out their kidneys if you feed them protein. That is not true. If you feed them an amount of protein that they need, they will use it for their need. You're not feeding them an amount of protein where they're going to metabolize kilograms of it a day, right?
So
So it's not a death sentence. There are other
So-
things that trigger episodes.
So that's, and the reason why I asked it particularly, besides the information, it seems like a very excellent marketing strategy because people love their horses. Love their horses. So if they can, one, identify that their horse might be at risk, then you have an answer for them that might be a way to amplify the sales. That's
So
why I
one
asked.
of the complications is, let's take one of the worst examples, which is thoroughbreds. Thoroughbreds are bred to run real fast when they're 3 years old. Nobody cares if they fall apart when they're 10. So if you went to a thoroughbred breeder and say, would you like to screen out these variants, which means that the horse could have a 15 or 20-year career where it's healthy, they say, we don't care. If it has a famous ancestor and it wins a race and we get big stud fees, we don't care if it has to be supported in a sling in order to breed, right? And so eventually retired thoroughbreds end up in the hands of horse owners who are doing other things with them, and then they fall apart. So the disease is typically late onset. So the other problem is that it happens after horses have been bred. The symptoms appear well after they've been bred. So the only way to breed it out is a genetic test.
So they wouldn't benefit from treating the horses so they last longer.
The breeding operation is only concerned with the speed at 3 years old in males.
The ones that are using them for stud services. They don't care.
That's the reason to run a horse in the Kentucky Derby. If you win, you get massive stud fees for that horse.
I'm gonna take a question online just real quick. if
Sure.
you don't mind. Phil, why don't you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Hey Paul, how are you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. So, listening to your presentation, you said your objectives is to get the CEO in. I can understand that you're concentrating on that at this particular time. But what I also heard you say was that you have value in your product and in your company, and that I think that you've got to look at, you're looking, how can I put this? You're looking inside your company on the big problems that you've got at the moment. And I can understand that because of the road you're going down to try and get CEO, and I know you've been trying for some time. But you need to look outside your company to see what value you have to offer the market. And I like the slide that you put up where you had 4 different ones. What was it? Breeders. What were the 4 you had up?
Breeders, horse owners, veterinarians, and breed organization.
Right. And if you looked at that, okay, I immediately looked at that. I immediately saw from that a swap. So if you look at the top left, you had your strengths. If you look at the right side, that was your weaknesses. That was the breeders. If you look down bottom left, you had the opportunities. And on the right-hand side, you had threats. And I think you, as an organization, need to start looking not just inside your company, but outside your company and how you're going to tackle those things.
Yeah.
You've been going for 7 years, and like you say, you've gone past the first phase, you're into the second phase, but you're not progressing from there. And doesn't matter what you do on the inside, okay, you may very well get a very good CEO in, and hopefully you do, and hopefully he starts to look at what you have in terms of value with your part, with your product, and how you put that into the marketplace, because you do have some very positive points that you've said about what's going on in the market. And even in the breeders, it seems to me that you've made some more inroads to breeders than we did last time we spoke about this. So I think you need to do that. The other thing, I remember your last presentation and someone asked how much you charge for this. And I think you said around $200.
$299. That is a
And I mean, you're going to have to do a lot of horses. All right, yep. $200. And if this thing really does have value, all right, so that those people that do want to know upfront for breeding, then why aren't you charging more for it? I mean, that to me last time was a question I didn't get in, but I was thinking about it afterwards. So I think while you're looking inside, fine, but look outside your organization, because you have value and you have markets you can tap, but you're not doing it at the moment.
Sure. So let me respond in a couple of ways. The price is actually set at what the market will bear. So there are horse genetic tests on the market. They cost around $50 a gene. There are 6 genes in our panel, so that should be a $300 test, and it is. So you can't go up from there, and going down from there with our current costs is just doesn't make any sense. And as for what's the biggest thing we could do to look outside the company and succeed, that's peer-reviewed publications. Because I get this torrent of negative and occasionally abusive messages that are public, and they're all about, you're not peer-reviewed, and they don't even understand what peer review is. They think it's like some Harry Potter trial where there's an amphitheater and you stand there and they describe you and everyone, thumbs up, thumbs down, and they kill you. So it's just a review of a manuscript for publication in a scientific journal. That's all it is. It's not an evaluation of your entire research portfolio or whether your mother loves you or any of that stuff. So it's just like, is this manuscript ready for publication? It doesn't even say, is the science in this manuscript correct? It just says, here's enough so that other scientists can see what idiots these guys are and what a poor job the reviewers are done, or they can try to replicate or refute the experiment. So that's the purpose of a scientific publication. They're not correct, all of them, even if they are peer-reviewed, but that's the thing that's really going to move it. If we have a peer-reviewed publication, we can go to the breed organizations, we can go to vets, even vets that were part of developing it, and say, now let's move this. So yeah, one horse at a time is tough, but selling it to breeding operations or having breed organizations required is another matter. So there are breed organizations that are cooperating with our European licensee, Generatio GmbH. There are 5 warm blood associations in Germany that have gotten together that are subsidizing the testing. They're going to test all of them, and the horse owners will get those results, and they'll use those to evaluate horses when they're 4 or 5 years old to see what does their gait look like, what does their performance look like. So they are adopting it in Europe. There are unique challenges in the United States, which we should discuss privately, and we know the path to marketing because the Europeans have done that.
Ken, we'll be back to have your question.
Jason Kahn from Jason Kahn Photography. Paul, my question is about the research, and just from thinking about it from a logical standpoint, you said you're in mad scientist mode now, so all kind of money and profits are being poured back into research. You don't want to bring on a CEO who will say, let's stop doing research to increase profits. Yet you have also applied for patents. So just to me, that makes me think you have the test done. So what is the research?
Oh, okay. What is research? Yeah, great. Okay, so the test is a test for whether a particular genetic variant, that is a change from one base to another, is present in the genome of a horse or not, right? So if you were sequenced and compared to the reference sequence, you'd have approximately 6 million differences from the reference sequence. So the question is, how many of those are bad news? And most of them are not. Most of them are neutral, right? So the patent is about this nucleotide change causes this change in the sequence of the protein, which, by using bioinformatic analysis, we can show is damaging. The research that we're doing now expands that and says, okay, we can prove this is damaging using assays that have been developed for the comparable human conditions. So, for example, the tissue culture assay, that's to look at a mutation that affects a collagen. Collagen is the majority of protein in your body is collagen. It's the thing that holds you all together. You're 70% water. The reason you're not jello is collagen, which ironically has collagen in it. Right. So it doesn't have as much as you do. So there's a specific kind of defect in collagen that's well studied in human. There are dozens of mutations of this kind. They all produce muscle defects, but they're not obvious in muscle. So one assay for the more subtle ones, which one of the horse one is to culture cells and let them make connective tissue in culture. And then you look at the connective tissue. And we suspect that horses that have the defect that we're looking at will make disorganized connective tissue the way the human mutations do. And that's proof at a level that those things are damaging that's not in the patent, right? So the patent just says, these are damaging. This is the evidence that they're damaging. The peer-reviewed publications take it the next step. I'm actually pretty well aware of what the threshold for publication is. So if you want to publish on a particular gene, you know, as a reviewer, I'd say you got to this, this, and this, and that's what we're trying to do, and that's the extra research that's sucking up the money. Does that make sense to people? And you have to file the patents, because if you start selling the test before you file the patent, you can't file the patent.
Just 1 second. Let's ask Ken has a question. Ken, you want to unmute and ask your question?
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Good. So I've learned that technology and science companies are set up to be either dominant in the field or bought out by the company that will become dominant in a startup technology. The way I see your path, you seem to be the latter. What will you offer that company who is going to become dominant? And how far away are you from something to offer to sell to a major competitor that seems to be dominant in the field?
Okay, so the first thing I have to say is what attracted us to the opportunity in the first place. And maybe this is a generalizable lesson. So the reason we started EquiSeq, I have no history with horses, right? We had a set of ideation sessions. We had 4 2-hour sessions with some very clever people. And we said we want an opportunity in genomics that doesn't have a lot of excess regulation, that eliminates anything human. That's a niche market that big boys are interested in, and that has some kind of social barrier to entry that makes it difficult for big companies to deal with. And it turns out, to my surprise, horse was that opportunity. The feds do not fund horse because it looks stupid to use your tax dollars to subsidize the sport of kings. So it's a wide open opportunity. A small company that's just starting could make a big difference. Okay, so what do we have? The reason to patent the gene tests is that other people can't do them without licensing them from us. The cost to license the test is far cheaper than the cost to research a new genetic variant in horse. So it makes more sense to build up the value of the company, build up its IP portfolio, and then have a potential acquirer look at us. So who are the potential acquiring targets? I have to say that genetic testing in horses is in its infancy due to lack of federal funding. When we started, there were over 5,000 genetic tests in humans for inherited conditions, and there were 16 in horse. So we could start anywhere, and we could, and with patents, we have a monopoly. No one can do those tests without licensing from us. So who are the big boys and what do we have to offer them? The big boys would either be pharmas that are veterinary like Zoetis or Boehringer Ingelheim, or perhaps even Mars, which has an animal feed division, and you may or may not know, bought up all the dog testing companies except in Embark. So all of those companies have market caps in the over $100 billion. So acquiring a company for its IP in the $20 to $50 million range is not a big deal for any of those companies. And I suspect some of them have a personal interest. Senior folks at Mars are equestrians and have an interest in horses. It's just there hasn't been anything for them worth buying.
Yeah.
Yet.
Barbara, come on up and then we'll come to you, Sue.
Good morning, I'm Barbara Dawson with Purple Mulch. I've owned horses in the past. I've had one that we had for maybe a month and she colicked on us and died. It was heartbreaking. Wasn't a muscle thing. But I look at your same slide with the 4 different groupings that you're looking to, these would be great people to deal with. And I'm not doubting your relationship with veterinarians at all. But I look at those and I go, who could best be your raving fan?
Oh, right now that's the horse owners.
It's
They're
the horse
crazy.
owners.
They're crazy
Okay.
wild.
So how can they influence the veterinarians to say, you need to do this test on every horse that I have come in, or maybe you're already doing that. My question is marketing. How do you get more money in your pocket so that you can get the CEO paid
Right.
and continue doing
Yeah.
the research?
Yeah.
So what are you doing in that regard?
So we do customer discovery on an hourly basis. I live on Facebook. That's where all the horse people are because of the demographic that they're in. They're all on Facebook. They talk about managing their horses. They talk about the difficult conversations they have with their vets. So you can put vets into a couple of different categories. One are the blazingly enthusiastic that are collaborating with us and recommending tests to their clients right now. They are open-minded, right? Because they say, okay, test can't hurt your horse. Let's just see if there's anything to it, right? And the other category is like, well, you know, you can do the test without my assistance. You don't need a vet to pull hair. Right? You just go ahead and do that, right? And I'll do my thing. The problem is that horses presenting with these symptoms, we know from multiple owners, I am not kidding, pay $10,000 to vets to run one test after another that produces an inconclusive result. And so the test is threatening to vets. So vets that are very worried about how am I going to keep charging for all these tests when people bring sick horses in? What if they can just pull hair? You know, they don't like us, right? So the only thing that can get them to accept the pain of losing all that, you know, useless testing info is peer-reviewed publications. Which again, you know, to answer a different question in the same way, that's why that's our number one objective, because that will increase sales. It will let us market to veterinarians and breed organizations, and it will show people that we're serious about science. We also have some things on the back burner they might be.
What I'm hearing you say is the only thing is going to make a difference is peer reviews.
That's
How are you
something.
increasing those?
Yeah. So general advice that I give to people in startup. There are times when there's a lot of things on the board, and you say this is no good, and this is no good, and this, and we have to do these things, and then you can rank those things whether there's anything you can immediately do about any of them. And if you can't, that's deferred. The ones that you can do something about today, you do, right? So peer review publications is almost entirely under my control. And to give you an example of what we did, we want to investigate this collagen, which is dead easy because nobody is going to argue that a glycine substitution in a triple dealable region of a collagen is not damaging. Okay, it's GlyXY, you change
Oh,
that.
come on.
Right. Hey, I told you, I have a 1970 trophy
All right.
for the best record on debate team in high school. So if you'd like to debate me on the subject, I'd be glad to humiliate you.
I'm leaving, I'm not coming.
Sue, I think it's your turn.
So anyway, we blew a lot of money doing free testing on standard breds, but we identified the horse we were looking for, which is homozygous for the K1 variant. It's in Missouri, and at the end of the month, I'm going up there for skin biopsy.
All right.
So that's what we're going to do of a peer review publication.
Stand by, Miriam. Sue's got a,
Do what you can today. That's the message.
Sue, too.
Good morning, Paul. I'm not going to beat a dead horse, so to speak, with the discussion on CEO. But you mentioned, big pharma, and I know you've got some really key targets. Do you have someone on your team that's talking to them about a collaboration?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. So, when I put up the team slide, there's like 8 people on the slide. Okay, not counting the blank CEO spot. I could do 6 minutes on each one of those people. Okay, so in answer to your question, we have on our board Patrick Jordan, who Stuart Rose introduced us to. And Patrick Jordan has decades of experience in international biotech and pharma, primarily in the Middle East. So he has done it all from that perspective. And so when he looks at the company, he says you got to do X, Y, and Z. He's not obsessed with the science. And so what has he done that's helpful to us? I have to airbrush this a little bit because of NDAs. But he went out and he found another pharmaceutical company that was very interested in one of our projects. The project attracted Patrick's attention because of a question that someone asked me at 1 Million Cups, which was, did our horse research have anything to inform human research? And the answer is, I didn't think so initially, but we have something that we think might be helpful. And he said, very good, let's talk to that pharma. They gave us the money to fund one of our collaborators for phase 1 of that project, which is complete. This is the zebrafish project, and phase 2, we're just getting that ironed out. And that will be a big deal, right? So the reason they have put that money into us, nobody knows jack about this gene. There are no mutations associated with it in humans, despite the how we discover genes thing I showed you. And there's no mouse knockout, despite the mouse knockout project, which is designed to knock out all 20,000 genes in the mouse one at a time. All right, they just haven't gotten to this one yet. So if this one works, the pharma says you may have identified a potential drug target for us. I don't know what a drug target is worth, but I do know that Merck paid 23andMe $63 million for data because there might be a drug target. So the pharma is being smart about this. We don't have any rights to human testing, and it's all up to them. I expect within a year of publishing that paper, there will be human patients because people have freezers full of samples that have not yet been given a molecular diagnosis. So the value there's even value to a potential human farm rather than just a horse farm.
Come on up, Marion.
I'm back.
Was I less than organized?
Well, there's some issues we need to talk about in terms of finding your CEO and getting your systems in place to have that person attracted to your business. But more about the pricing. I was really intrigued by your flat out statement that you can't charge more. And in the next question, say that one of your holdups is that vets charge more.
Oh, right.
For tests that don't work.
Right.
And that seems like an opportunity that ties back to what Phil said about using your threats to help you and getting those people on board by telling vets they can charge $10,000 for your test that actually works.
The vets can't charge $10,000 for a test because everyone knows you can pull horse hair and just mail it in.
I know, but there's an in between there somewhere. That
Right.
I'm just using
So
the extreme example, but there's a way of looking at it.
Right.
And also the peer review is super important to you as a scientist.
Right. But it's also marketing.
And yes, but we just lived through the COVID thing with all the information and all the supplements for humans and all that. Consumers don't actually care about the peer review part as much as you do, and the technical people do. And so there's another in-between place you can enter that conversation that could get you that traction that leads to the peer review.
Well, the thing about peer review is people who do not understand it on Facebook still parrot, to use that word, this phrase that it hasn't been peer reviewed, so these aren't any good, right?
That's your opportunity, though, to say why it's in process, and the more feedback you get, the better that peer review
Right,
is.
but ultimately, the only answer to that question is peer review publication. And even if people can't read it,
I'm
because
not saying
most
don't
people
do it.
can't read the
I'm
primary
saying
literature.
don't lead with that.
Yes, yeah, I mean, for this audience, right? to the horse people on Facebook, it's difficult to make statements about the future. And like, okay, when is this paper going to appear? And if I say, February 15th, and they say, would it be at 8 in the morning or at 5? And it's
When
just
it
ridiculous.
enters the
But they
zeitgeist
don't understand, they don't
conversation.
understand all that. So in terms of pricing, we've had, Alex and I used to have this conversation regularly. Is there some service that we could offer that uses our entire expertise for which you could charge? And it depends on the breed. So the price range in horses is ridiculous. You can buy a quarter horse at a claiming race for $1,000. A horse that won the Kentucky Derby, a thoroughbred that won the Kentucky Derby a number of years ago, sold for $60 million. So that's the price range, right? So if you're talking about $1,000 horse, the $300 test is a big deal. If you're talking about $100,000,
People pay that much to test their cats and dogs.
yeah, I know, but
I think your vision of the money situation is very based on what you would pay. for it.
well, no, it's different among breeds. So we're gonna have different successes in different breeds, and
I
and
just
it's
don't want you to say it's not possible.
oh, it's certainly possible to make more money, to say, like, take over a breeding operation, say, we'll tell you what horse to make to what horse, we'll test all your
Right.
horses, we'll give you advice, we'll come to your house and do the dishes, and here's how much it'll cost.
You don't have to do the dishes part, but
Okay,
rest.
right. So,
could charge a huge premium for
there
that.
is, and we also have trade secrets
Right,
that we're gonna sell for a ridiculous amount of money that I haven't done.
right. But just so you say, stop saying you can't charge more than that. 'Cause
We
you
could
can,
sell
just not the way
Other
you're
services,
thinking.
yeah, not as individual tests, but we can sell other services,
All right,
tiers
okay,
of
all
breeding
right.
programs, right? Yeah, good. Where's your trophy?
Thank you for challenging him. I've never seen it.
But if you had a trophy, it would probably have Arabic numerals rather than Roman numerals for the year like mine does. Go ahead.
All right. Okay, so first of all, so when are you publishing?
So here's the plan. We spent $30,000 on genetic testing of standardbreds to find this horse. I'm going up, we went on scientist.com to find contract research organizations to do the fibroblast culture. Last week, I agreed to the statements of work from 2 different companies. It turns out we have 2 other genotypes we want to look at related to that gene, the heterozygous and the homozygous normal. And by chance, there's a horse owner within an hour's drive of the primary site that has those 2 horses. So those 3 skin samples go off. About a month later, we get the pictures. At the beginning of September, I'm traveling to North Carolina. We're going to go up to another vet. We have another set of samples to do for maybe muscle biopsies, skin biopsies. If the results are as expected, we have everything we need.
Okay.
And it is a non-controversial paper, and we'll put it in a legitimate scientific journal. After that, there's some big shockers.
Awesome. All right.
All right.
That sounds good. All right. So red or green?
Do you like your mom or your dad better? So I would say Carne Nevada's got to be red, right? It's one of New Mexico's brilliant things, but like almost everything else. Chicken enchiladas on blue corn, chip, it's got to be.
Oh, no, that's
Green.
red.
Oh, that could work too. All right, well, it's a never-ending discussion, but I love them both.
All right, cool. And then, what can we as a community do for you?
So the 1 Million Cups community has already been really helpful over the years, offering suggestions and advice and arguing with me and stuff. And I look forward to that in the future. 2 things specifically. Number 1, if you know anyone who has horses, or anyone who knows anyone who has horses, especially a breeding operation, please put us in touch. If we could find a breeding operation willing to work with us, we test all their horses for free and give them a nice clean breeding program. The other thing is we're always looking for talent. You've heard me talk about the strategy here, and you've kicked it back and forth with me. If you want to keep doing that, reach out to me, talk to me. I'd love to hear about strategy. There are some other folks from outside 1 Million Cups who are coaching me now, and I'm greatly appreciating their assistance as well. But please join in.
Awesome.
Sorry, Ken and Bill, we ran out of time, but I think you guys know how to reach out.
All right, so how much time do we have left?
10 minutes.
10 minutes? Well, Paul's busy. We'll go ahead and wrap it up today.
So I have an event I
There
can
you go.
share. Eric's not here today. The Bioscience Center has a new entrepreneur in residence, and her name is Sarah. How do you say her last name? Bosworth? Waver. Very cool. She lives in Santa Fe. She's been helping a couple of the entrepreneurs here and at the Bioscience Center. And she created this startup evaluation model that she wants to share with everyone. And so we're going to have an in-person workshop on Tuesday, August 30th at 11:30 at the Bioscience Center. If you'll find that on the Bioscience Center website or Eventbrite. If you can't find the link, just email me and I'll send you the link to register. Of course, it's free, brown bag, bring a lunch and join us for that. Does anybody else have an event they want to share?
So there's an Asian Expo at the Balloon Fiesta. It's $20 to $40, or you can volunteer. I'm sure there's something involved in that. That's happening not this weekend, but next weekend, right? The 19th, well, maybe it's the weekend after that. Anyway, 19th and 20th, that kind of time, they're gonna do an Asian Expo. There's gonna be businesses from the Asian collaboration, and then also film festival stuff for Asian films. And so it's kind of a fun deal. And look that up at asianexpo.com.
You're not going to talk about your workshop?
My workshop? Oh, yeah, okay. So Miriam has been my business coach before, and so she's encouraged me to actually talk about my business. So I have some workshops coming up, and the one coming up in August is Wired That Way, which is about how the brain works and often how it gets in the way of what we want to change, based on like MRI scans and stuff that they've kind of learned over the last 30 years, and kind of how that now can apply to actually how we act. And so that's a Wired That Way workshop. I'm gonna do one in August. I've got some planned for October. If anyone's interested, you can contact me at sparksflow.com.
I have, if anybody is interested in writing a short story, I have my short story-a-thon coming up next weekend. So Friday night, we come up with an idea for our story. Sunday, we publish to Amazon, and 90% of our authors actually get a best-selling short story out of it. So it's always been exciting. If you're interested, check out women'sthriller.writers.com, and the events are right there.
Awesome. So next week we have Fallon Bader with the Sprouting Pigeon. She's here for her coaching session. And we have two presenters next week. Also Ingela Onstad with Courageous Artistry. She had to cancel a couple weeks ago, and so we fit her back in the schedule. So hope you guys will come back next week. Paul, do you want to do your fantastic closing?
Oh,
for us?
You know, I would say something about the presentation you saw today, but that would be immodest. But I think you could see that in the presentation today, there's been a hand by the community in everything we've done over the years. So thanks to all of you for doing that. Keep it up. Talk to somebody you don't know and see if you know something they don't know or someone that they might need to meet. Yeah.
How about first-time attendees?
Oh, first-time attendees. How many first-time attendees do we have?
Oh, come on up and introduce
Come on up and
yourself.
introduce yourself.
Thank you so much. My name is Carrie Rose O'Connell, and I run a local brand marketing and consultation service called Rose Brand Consultation Services. And I just recently expanded my service package to include the Albuquerque Film and Media Incubator. So I'm helping local content creators create micro budget projects of $20,000 and less. They learn the business of film from pitch to post. Thanks so much for having me.
Hello, everyone. I'm Campbell Bishop. I'm a commercial photographer here in Albuquerque. I just opened up Your Daily Studios, which is a rental-based space for other photographers or filmmakers to come in and utilize a professional space without actually needing to take on that overhead themselves. I was invited by Jason and David, who both came to the grand opening. So I think in a couple weeks, we'll be doing the presentation.
August 24th.
24th, I'll be back. So thanks so much.
Come on up.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? Name's Chris Jaramillo. I'm not here with a startup per se. I'm actually here helping out a nonprofit. And we're actually looking for a web developer. So if anybody here has some of that skills, we'd love to talk with you. Thanks.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. Ingenuity Software Lab, Ingenuity Software